decided why not satiate my curiosity and get something on the channel. So we'll be pretty much going over a complete history recap of the film industry, but I also want to have some focus on how editing started and evolved through the years. So let's just jump in. So, depending on your definition of a film, which I'm sure is pretty widely agreed on, there isn't, from my research, one person who started or invented film. But in 1893, the Edison Company revealed the Kinetoscope, which I'm sure I butchered, for demonstration. This was a one-person device to let the viewer see moving picture. By 1894, it was a massive success, and an even cooler fact, the first film to be shown to a paying audience was in Paris, France in 1895 by their own unique device called a cinematograph. Also a weird name, so bad at pronouncing these. Anyways, I want to know what the first full-length film was to be released, preferably something of actual feature-length runtime, or some sort of rating of the film, or both. Now, this criteria will cut down a lot of films, as most early films were seconds, maybe even minutes long. So, in talking about the first full feature-length film, we would need to go back to 1906 for the release of the film The Story of the Kelly Gang, which was the first multi-reel feature-length film at a runtime of 1 hour and 10 minutes. And by the 1930s, it was the norm for most films to have full picture, sound, and even color too. I found that very interesting because I'm not sure if it was from how we were taught when we were younger, but I always remember thinking sound wasn't a thing until like the 60s or the 50s, but maybe I just was dumb. As scienceandmediamuseum.org.uk wrote, by 1914, several national film ministries were established. At this time, Europe, Russia, and Scandinavia were the dominant industries. America was much less important. Films became longer, and storytelling or narrative became the dominant form. As people paid to see movies, the industry which grew around them was prepared to invest more money in their production, distribution, and exhibition. So large studios were established and dedicated cinemas were built. The First World War greatly affected the film industry in Europe, and the American industry grew in relative importance. The first 30 years of cinema were characterized by the growth and consolidation of an industrial base, the establishment of a narrative form, and refinement of technology. End quote. Film had a boom in the 30s. By 1946, Britain had over 31 million visits at peak. Though, time would be film's biggest enemy due to attendance dwindling down all the way into essentially the 1990s. So, this would be a pretty general and quick recap of how the beginning age of film started and what it grew into for the time. Now, let's get into more specifics of the video. How was editing done to early films? So, of course, to be even more specific, how was early film edited before the use of digital computer technology? Well, I'm sure, and at least I hope, that most of you know that films were made on actual film rolls. So, whenever films needed to be edited, the actual film strip would need to be cut, spliced, and of course edited there. So for editing purposes, such as fade-ins, fade-outs, credits, images, or any sequence at the beginning of the film, on top of the actual motion picture, were done with a device called an optical printer, or just hand-illustrated cards inserted onto or in the film. These optical printers did great things for the progress of film, but they were never exactly common, nor was there a set design for them. They were mostly handcrafted and complicated machines. In 1931, RKO's head of special effects, Lord Kinetoscope, said, quote, "Within the past few years, the motion picture has almost universally adopted the system of optical printing and its many and varied uses and forms, and has found it invaluable as both an artistic and economic aid." End quote. machines worked? No. Do I plan on explaining how they worked? Probably not. But there's some basic general info on it. So, that would be mostly it for early film editing. What about the beginning area of film editors and the use of digital technology well before the use of things such as Final Cut or Premiere Pro? So, me personally, when I think of early digitally edited films, I think of some old movie with really bad CGI or something. But let's look into see if that is indeed the case for them. How long were movies taking to be made now? How much were they costing? And how complicated was it? So, up until the age of digital computers for editing, from my research, it appears that by now most film techniques had been discovered and used, and theater attendance was declining rapidly since the 40s until about the 70s and 80s. Then came the start of the next big film boom. So, what happened to the film industry and editing at and after the 80s? Well, in 1971, the first ever digital editing machine for film and shows was released, the CMX 600. This was a machine with a console, two monitors, one with a blank screen and one with a white screen, and a light pen which was served essentially as a mouse or a pointer. One monitor was used for the actual editing, putting text over film or making any cuts or any edit decisions, and the other monitor was used to show the edited film itself, like a preview. This also preserved the original film while essentially making a copy and pasting parts onto an alternate timeline to then be edited. This changed the way media would be edited, as things no longer needed to be edited linearly, but could be edited at any point of whatever was being edited. I should have some pictures up showing how massive this setup was, as it was not just the CMX in action here. This is from the Wikipedia page on the CMX 600. Quote, the editing console was interfaced to two equipment racks of support equipment, which were usually located remotely in another room from the console. The first rack contained the interface electronics for the system, monitoring equipment, and a digital PDP-11 mini computer with 32 kilobytes of RAM, which controlled the system. The second rack contained all the audio and video electronics, and the skip field recorder, which took in video and audio for editing from a VTR, and then recorded such to one or several disc packs and interfaced to the 600. While this technology was impressive, it was also very expensive, and also there were not many around. Each one cost around $250,000, and around 6 systems were ever manufactured. As time went on, improvements were made to the system, such as for power and storage, and digital editing became very much the norm. As time went on and technology and computer power progressed, things such as CGI began to roll out. I mean, 2001: A Space Odyssey came out in 1968, Star Wars 1977, and even Alien came out in 1979. This should kind of give an idea, at least to me, on how advanced film had became in the 70s. CGI had already began to become the norm as well, and only kept advancing through time. By the early 2000s, it seemed the world was going back into another film attendance boom, and from their actual film editing programs were already the norm. I mean, one of my favorites, The Matrix, was released in 1999, and I think the editing and CGI from that still looks great, actually, for the most part at least. And that'll be the video. I'm actually using LumaFusion on my iPad for the light editing, which I absolutely love using LumaFusion. So, if you guys hear this, I'm ready to sponsor. And also resolve for any more intensive edits that need to be done. So, for final thoughts, I hope this video was fairly interesting or boring enough to help you sleep, as that is kind of the point. I'm a super enjoyer of film, and I found it super interesting to research on how things used to be done and how things are currently done. So, leave a comment if there's something else that would be interesting or stream sometime soon.